you talk about blues alive with such passion, and also where you started out in college, not being a quote unquote, jazz guitar major or something. It almost seems like where you are in your career now, it's like a hand in a glove, so to speak.
The first music teacher I ever had was Yusef Lateef.
And that's
But
a pretty heavy teacher to have right from the get-go, right?
it was an amazing, and that's what really set the trajectory for this kind of different perspective on, and that's what I always say. Our mantra is here is that we are social studies teachers who happen to be musicians. Now, my opinion is that musicians are the best teachers. So, but it's not a music curriculum. It's an African American studies curriculum with music as the through line of the story.
It sounds to me like this would be something much more eye-opening for them.
I have a special interest in instruments from the like the Himalayan region, Nepal and Tibet, and like Buddhist chanting and the singing bowls and stuff like that. So I would take instruments like this into the classroom or into the assembly hall. The thing that is interesting about this is that these are instruments which really they really only make one voice, one sound, right? It's a limited musical application, but it's a broad human application. Where the guitar is a very complicated instrument. There's 6 strings, it's vertical, it's horizontal. In order to conform to Western standards of beauty, you have to be able to play the guitar in a way that's not going to offend the people around you. The innovation that I made was by taking instruments that sound good, but only have a limited musical role. For example, if you were to write something down on guitar, it would be like the entire staff, right? Guitar is very low, it's very high, it's very rhythmic, it's very melodic, right? But a bell that has just a nice tone to it and a full voice of its own would only occupy one place on a musical staff, right? So if you take a bunch of people who are not musicians and you give them a bunch of instruments, you now have an orchestra. In order to unlock their potential to communicate with each other and experience the community, you have to remove yourself from the fact that we have to play a certain song. In other words, you're reducing the dependence on a Western ideals of beauty.
When this is, this is great. I love hearing you talk about this and how passionate you are.
If you're on stage performing tunes, or if you're in an assembly hall interacting with student collaborators, you're still trying to have a human connection with them. So that's the same. The message is the same. When you're working with Juma Sultan, when you're working with Myra Casales, Avery Sharpe, Daniel Carter, William Parker, Sonny Fortune, there's a core message that these people are focused on in their lives. And you're either illustrating that message, inviting people in on stage as a traditional performance, or you're collaborating them. When we get collaborating with our student collaborators, we are then their accompanists. You're turning people into musicians who have never been invited to be musicians before. So you're inviting them into something that they innately have, that they have never been. Some people, I've heard the term safe space. The safe space is the fact that Avery Sharpe is now accompanying you. The trick is to create a curriculum and create a story that re-examines some of the ways that we do things in institutions, in history, in social studies, in music pedagogy, in jazz world, to re-examine those things that we take for granted, to do it in a way that invites people instead of indicts them.
No, I love it. I love it.